Buenas noches and bienvenidos a the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College. It is an extraordinary pleasure to welcome all of you tonight to our new building and Centro's new home, and to celebrate one of the great citizens of New York City, Nelida, who is really the goddess, I think, of Centro. So I think that I think when we give her the Lifetime Achievement Award, we may have to just change that to goddess. So if you have time on the inscription. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you who haven't yet been to our newly opened building. As all of you can see, this is truly an extraordinary, beautiful building. But more than that, this has really been the realization of a beautiful idea. The idea that a school of social work could locate in a neighborhood where their training and their research and their service is really desperately needed, where they could co-locate with a school of public health in a neighborhood with some of the worst health indicators in the city and in the state, and we could come together to engage in a community. And perhaps one of the most beautiful things that we celebrate tonight about this building is that finally Hunter College and CUNY provides to Centro space, beautiful space and sufficient space that is equal to the value of the extraordinary archives of Centro. And I think that is really what we celebrate tonight. And what better person here tonight to celebrate as we finally say we have beautiful space, we have enough space for these incredible archives, than Nelida Perez, whose vision and hard work in putting all the archives together. She's the person who made this happen, and I think it's a beautiful thing that in honoring her, we honor her not just with a gorgeous award tonight, but we honor her with the future, because the future is not just this gorgeous space. The future is what you see outside, and we did this purposely. You look and you see the community. This is an archives that must engage with this community, and because of the architecture of this building, we have to engage with this community. So this is a really incredible time for us. Sometimes you have a vision. We had a vision that we can really bring Centro and invest in it and really engage in this incredible community. And what a community, El Barrio. And tonight we celebrate the fact that we have finally made this happen. In addition to honoring Nelida today, we are opening officially one of the most extraordinary art exhibits that I have ever seen. When we knew we would have this space, I turned to Edwin and said, could we work on an art exhibit that celebrated and was built on the richness of the Central archives? And the two of us, I think, simultaneously turned to someone who we knew would provide the leadership to help us. And the first person we turned to when we thought about art and who would have a vision and who would understand the richness of these archives, the importance of the history housed in this building, but also had an eye for art and an understanding of exhibits that's unparalleled. And that, of course, is Susanna Laval, the former head of Museo del Barrio. And then we turn to one of the true geniuses of this country, somebody who knows how to get whatever needs to get done, and someone whose passion for Centro is unparalleled, and that, of course, is Dennis Rivera. And the two of them came together and looked at each other and said, well, there's only one answer to this question if we want to have an exhibit, and that's Antonio Martorell. So, now, for those of you who don't know Antonio, he's not always dressed in a postman's uniform. Did he change yet? Is he out? Okay, all right. And that was only, there he is. I have to say, okay, there he comes. Ready to deliver. I have to say, the hardest thing about this opening was not mounting this just extraordinary exhibit, but was when Antonio said, I need to have a postman's costume to wear at the opening. Well, those of you who know government know it's actually a felony to dress like a postman. And you know, Antonio is indefatigable, and we had to argue with him. So I think we have a fake postman's. Either we have a fake postman's costume, or the police are going to come and get you any minute now.
You'll deal with that.
You'll deal with that. As you'll hear a little bit later, this is based on the work of 5 incredible Puerto Rican artists who came into the Central Archives to look at the photographs, the manuscripts, the documents, and really create this incredible exhibit called Labor, which really brings to life the unsung blood, sweat, and tears of the Puerto Rican community who came to New York and what they contributed over the years. And through this beauty, we remember their commitment and their contribution to New York City in a way that is engaging and just incredibly beautiful. And you'll hear from all the artists, but one of the very exciting things for us is that we've been able to not just bring Centro here, but to bring so much of Hunter College. And I just want to single out Juan Sanchez, an extraordinary artist, but one of our great faculty members. So thank you, Juan. And I also seeking this, we have the Secretary of State with us, an incredible Puerto Rican leader, Cesar Perales. And Cesar is here with us in heart and in spirit because you are a CUNY graduate, so I had to mention that. And you succeed our own Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, who is a Hunter girl. So there we go. We're gonna keep this Secretary of State thing in the family. It is not trite to say we would not be here without our next speaker. Congressman Jose Serrano's efforts and support and passion, understanding, leadership, and just really sort of living the Centro mission is something that we all know, and we don't have enough opportunities to say thank you to him. So it is so incredibly fitting tonight, Congressman, that to have you here today to see what the fruits of your labor have been, that it's really been your sustained support, finding the collections for us, always caring, always having a vision. Even tonight, you came with new ideas of what we need to be doing next. I thought we'd get to relax for a minute and just celebrate the opening. But the Congressman has given us some new work to think about. And I just hope that you are as proud as we are of this new home, and in dedicating this home tonight, that we dedicate to you, that we will really make just really equal to you the value of the passion that you have had for this, for Centro and for this enterprise, by continuing to build the archives, and more importantly than building, but to open the archives to the young people of this community so that the learning can continue and the knowledge can be created. But without you, Centro would not be the extraordinary place it is. You really are an incredible public servant, and it is my personal honor to be able to say to you today, muchas gracias. Congressman Serrano.
When I came from Puerto Rico, from Mayagüez in 1950, it wasn't easy being a Puerto Rican in New York. Today, it is not easy being a Dominican, a Colombian, a Mexican, or any other Latino in New York. But as I often tell them in the most diplomatic and soft way, it's much easier being a Latino in New York because Puerto Ricans opened the doors to create New York City a bilingual town. And so when you arrive in New York today, you find a bodega everywhere. But I remember Puerto Ricans begging the state liquor authority to let them sell beer, and they couldn't get it. When you arrive in New York now, and you play soccer, or baseball, or basketball, you can quickly find some place, limited, some place to play. I remember St. Mary's Park, the Puerto Rican baseball leagues fighting and using political power that they were gaining to get a permit to play on the weekends. Those guys who had played all their life and at 95 were still playing baseball. I remember my father, Jose Pepe Serrano, getting a box lunch from my mother, Hipólita Pola Serrano Soto Rivera del Mar, so that he could go and picket Channel 9 to get 1 hour of Spanish programming on Sunday nights. And two friends of our community, an Italian-American Don Pesante and a Puerto Rican Miguel Machuca, got the gig, and they gave us a show 1 hour a night. Why do I say that? Because there used to be one time a year, Puerto Rican Parade Weekend. Now, with this, it's 2 times this year, where I continue to show my respect for the Latino community and our struggle, but I feel that it is important for every Latino in New York to know where they've been. And where they've been is in their own country, and as Puerto Ricans 50 years ago in a struggle to make New York the bilingual town that it is today. And so Centro becomes much more important than ever before. Because what happens is, as new groups arrive and the community gets more diverse and grows, people tend to forget. And people who forget are doomed to failure. This country could be in trouble if amongst all the mistakes we make at times, still the greatest country on earth, but all the mistakes, we forget that we're a country of immigrants, or in the case of Puerto Rican, migrants. And so these things are important to us. Centro then is something that was easy. You give me all this credit for what I've done. All I've done is taking their tax dollars and sent it to you. Better than Iraq, you know. And let me take a second to say that the president announced that the war is over, and the war is over. And we as liberals who oppose that war do always pause to honor the troops. And don't let anybody tell you that in our anti-war sentiment we ever insulted the troops. The troops are on assignment, and those we lost and those who are coming back are our heroes and heroines, and we will continue to treat them that way. And so I really can't emphasize just how important you are now. Because now you must take the history of Puerto Ricans in New York. Now you must collect all the documents. Now you must continue to put this together and apply it not only as the history of the pioneers, but how it applies to the struggle for other groups. Sure, Puerto Ricans never went through the issue of being undocumented, but no one knew that in the way they treated us. They treated us as we were foreigners. And it didn't matter. We said, but I was born an American citizen. Yeah, okay, just sit over there and mind your own business. And the struggles have been that for such a long time. And so when we look at this room today, and we look at the intelligentsia that is here, the people that have been struggling for years, we have to be proud of ourselves. We have to be proud of what we have accomplished as a community. And we have to make sure that Centro continues to grow so it can take all that documentation and everything else. One of the projects that I always wanted to create, which I'm going to give you an idea for, is simply grab a camera, and there are talented people who do that, a recording camera, and go to the basement of churches or outside community centers and say, Doña Juana, come over here. When did you arrive from Puerto Rico? Well, that's so long ago, I don't remember. When did you arrive? Tell me from the day you left your house in Jajayuya to the time you got on the plane to the time you arrived here, and let's do that oral history. That's important, and it has to be done. And now, since I am the most diplomatically suit-wearing individual who says profound or daring things, I also want to thank Centro for not changing your name. It is el Centro de Estudios Puertorriqueños, and people can come and study and be part of it, but it is el Centro de Estudios Puertorriqueños. And so I leave you with this thought. We will continue to grow as a community, and we will continue to be a resource for other communities, and we will continue to bind with other communities and join and intermarry and hang out and do everything else. But we must continue more than ever now to know our history in this city, especially now that there are more people who identify as Puerto Rican in the 50 states than people who identify as Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. That has changed everything for the first time, And that's why Carmelo Anthony now is the Nick Puerto Rican superstar. So thank you so much. I leave you with this final thought. I was at a hearing of the FBI where we approved their budget as chairman of the subcommittee. And Louis Freeh was the head of the FBI at that time. And I said, you know, there was a time in the history of the Puerto Rican community where they were treated very badly by the FBI, especially when the FBI helped criminalize the independence movement. I thought I was going to get the usual comment, well, that's not true, that never happened. He said, no, it's true. We have the records, and if you want, we'll start turning them over to you. Granted, the records have been tatched out somewhat, probably to get rid of names of people who are still around. But anyway, those records, 2 packages were given to me every month. One I sent to the Senate in Puerto Rico, and someday they'll decide to do something with it, any of the parties. And the other I sent to Centro, and my copy. And my copy could not be in better hands than in Centro. And I know the work you've done with it, and you will continue to do with it. And ladies and gentlemen, I know I've taken a little longer than I should, but it is close to 100 years in New York City. To do 5 or 6 minutes, it's really not doing justice. Thank you so much, and continue the battle.
And we are so proud to have those records in this building. And before I introduce our next speaker, I'm going to tell one of these wonderful stories about how fate makes wonderful things happen. This building was built based on a private gift from the Silberman family. And the Silberman family was run by a man named Buddy Silberman, who was a cigar manufacturer. And he went down doing business in Puerto Rico and met, as I heard the story originally, a social worker who started to tell him about the importance of social work and why we needed more trained social workers. And he came back to New York City and did an extraordinary thing. He bought the townhouse next to his on 79th Street, tore both of them down, and built the Hunter School of Social Work with his own money. So when we really outgrew it and we didn't have the money to renovate it for our needs, I asked the foundation that was now running the building for us, since Mr. Silberman had passed away, if they would sell the building and give us the money to be able to move to East Harlem. And they eventually agreed with the help, and I know one of your children is Centro, Congressman, but your other child, State Senator Jose Serrano, with his help, we got the rest of the money to build this building from the state, and he deserves great, great credit for that. And we were able to build this building. And for years, I had this nagging question in my mind when I heard this story about who was that social worker, because I had one of those life-changing experiences where my friend Felo Matos Rodriguez, who just walked in, Felo, I saw you in the back, our former head of Centro, who is amazing. I saw him there. When Felo was able to ask Antonia Pantoja to donate her papers to Centro, he brought her to my office so we could sign the deal and we could say an appropriate thank you. And I finally asked the Silberman family, who was that social worker? And because there is fate, of course, that social worker who influenced Mr. Silberman to build us the first building that allowed us to build this building, which now is the house of her archives, was, of course, Antonia Pantoja. So what a wonderful, wonderful story. So many friends have made this possible, and it is great pleasure for me to introduce our new state assemblyman, who we first met in one of probably the most thankless positions in New York City, and that's being a community board chair. And as somebody who spent years of service on my local community board, Robert, I know exactly how hard you worked for exactly very little recognition and no pay. But what's wonderful is that your service, your intelligence, your drive, your passion, and your commitment to social justice became evident in that position, and you were thus resoundingly elected as our state assemblyman. You've been an incredible supporter from when we first came to you as community board chair to say, could we move to your neighborhood? Thank you so much for all your support, and thank you for being such a great friend of El Centro. State Assemblyman Robert Rodriguez.
Thank you, President. No, the only response to that question, will you move, is you need to move. And where do you need to move? Right here. because there is no better place for El Centro than right here in El Barrio. And I think the congressman said it best in terms of why it's so important that Centro is here right now, is because before us, the generation before us fought and struggled to make sure that the things that we have and take for granted today were won. And they were won through hard-fought battles. And those battles are documented right here in the Centro. The history of Puerto Ricans moving here from the Isla is documented here. And I think when we talk about what's important, as the next generation of leaders it grows, it needs to grow from a community like El Barrio. And the only way that they can take the next steps in their development is if they know the history. And I'm one of those, in terms of not having lived those struggles and experiences, but having heard them from my father. And when we talk about how I was able to develop, it was through education. It was through reading books. In particular, in reference to Piri Thomas, who passed away, Down These Mean Streets. To think that I read that in what has to be the 90s, but it was written in 1967. And it's a transformative book in many of our lives. And that same experience can now be had here at El Centro in terms of checking the history of those who came before us in the struggles and what we were able to accomplish. So I'm proud to say that we have won another victory in terms of creating a home for El Centro where it's probably needed most, here in El Barrio. When we talk about the things that we have to deal with in the future, around the questions around social work and public health and the challenges that we have amongst identity and self-respect, and the issues around our young people and their quest and search and access for education, this is now a beacon where they can come to address those concerns, to continue to build the community that we all strive for and have dreamed about and have struggled for at different times in our lives. So I'm happy to take on this struggle, but to know that I have a home, I have a reference point, I have a place where I can continue to learn about my history and use that to guide us as we struggle for a better future. So there is no better home than here. I thank President Raab for her leadership and vision in terms of making this happen, because it doesn't happen by itself. She had to fight to get this deal put together. She had to lobby relentlessly every level of government. And this is why state and city universities exist, to provide education to those who need it most and those who are most enthused about pursuing it. And here in El Barrio, we have those people. And now we have the place, here at El Centro and here at Hunter College. So thank you.
The one thing is you have to be ready to move, pack, re-envision yourself, and come back home to El Barrio, because that was the gleam in our eye, and Edwin's whole face lit up and said, what a beautiful, beautiful vision. But without his incredible hard work, and Alberto, our librarian, and so much of the incredible Centro staff, and so many of you are here, I just want to give you all a round of applause, because you really make us so proud. And it is a great honor to have Edwin as a colleague, to have him as really the vision of Centro, and to welcome him here tonight, Edwin Melendez.
It is a great pleasure to be here today and to share this event with university and community leaders. Today we inaugurate the new home for Centro's Library and Archives. Our new home has everything we imagined we would have. A beautiful reading room where we honor our heritage, 24/7 climate-controlled facilities that meet the most rigorous preservation standards, the most advanced technologies for our staff to continue their excellent work. And our new home is in El Barrio, a place of great historical value. Sure, you can let it come. A place of great historical value and cultural heritage for the Puerto Rican community, as you just heard many times. Many people have contributed to our move to this state-of-the-art facility. We would like to thank President Jennifer Raab and Provost Vera Rabinowitz and all the CUNY and Hunter College leadership for sharing our vision for for these facilities and for making that vision a reality. Without your leadership and determination, this beautiful building would not have been possible. So please, let her hear our appreciation. Por favor, come on. Show it. I would also like to thank our staff. I have to extend my deepest appreciation to all the Centro Library and Archives staff for enduring the disruption of their work for the last few months and for dedication to making this move a reality. And what a beautiful space we have. Can our staff please raise their hands, Jose and Mayra and all the others and all the library staff here? Raise your hands. Now let's hear for them. Raise your hands, come on. Show them some love. Now, we celebrate this new home with a renewed commitment to our historical preservation and educational mission. Let me say a few words about that. First, look around. Labor is a unique tribute to the Puerto Rican heritage and to the historic preservation efforts of our organization. Soon you will hear more from the curators, Antonio Martorell and Susana Deval, and from all the artists and other collaborators responsible for this beautiful exhibit. And in this location, the library and the archives is only going to get better. We just finished the first meeting of a committee called 100 Puerto Ricans. You may wonder what that is. A group of friends and longtime supporters who will help us work towards an ambitious goal for enriching and expanding our resources by adding 100 collections to our archives in 1 year. 100. We have 250. We want to go to 100. So all of those who were in that meeting, please raise your hands and let's hear for them. These are the people who are going to do all the work. Cesar, you too. You're not going to escape. These are the people who are going to chase after all those pioneros that are out there and still are thinking about giving us their paper. And by the way, they're going to do the development. They're going to do the fundraising to help us achieve that goal. This expansion will enhance our resources by making our collections more comprehensive and balanced. We will be adding the stories of Puerto Ricans who have made a difference in areas that are currently underrepresented in our holdings, such as the military, businesses, barrio residents, and what have you. We need your help in making this goal a reality. Can the 100 Puerto Ricans Committee, be successful? It depends on you. In November, we will continue the celebration of this new space by holding events commemorating the Puerto Rican Heritage Month with all our partners, Comité Noviembre and almost everyone who's here. Okay. This year, we celebrate with programs about the lives of great Puerto Rican men and women who donated their collections to our archives: Antonia Pantojas, Clemente Soto Vélez, Fran Bonilla, and Pura Belpré. Centro produced a video for each one of them, and the videos will be available to teachers and parents for use in the classroom and at home. Finally, I would like to extend a sincere appreciation and thank all of you for being here tonight. It actually is what we need to happen often. With your support, Centro Library and Archives will continue to be the main source of information on the Puerto Rican community in the United States. In our new home, we welcome you to share the best we have to offer. Take, when you leave, an events calendar with you, come to all our fall programs, and enjoy our new space. Buenas noches.
So I want to ask Felo. Felo, you're hiding in the back. You have to come up and help us present the award. And Nelida, you have to come up to receive your award. And Congressman will help us. So, and Edwin, come. It is a pleasure to officially present this award to Nelida, but all of you know everything I'm about to say, and I think even more. She has been the center of Centro almost in the very beginning. And it's really hard hard to describe the work that Nelita did in this role was so pivotal in making Centro's Library and Archives what they are today. This is something that just would not have happened without you. And Nelita, when I was Landmarks Commissioner, you could make somebody a building a landmark if they were 30. And since you were here for 31 years, I think I have the official ability to make you a landmark. Which means you will not be able to change your hair or anything else ever. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Everything you've done here shows the incredible job you did for Centro, how it grew its first home in John Jay, moved to Hunter, and I hope that you share our joy in finally finding a home that really is, as I said, commensurate with the work, the passion, the effort, the love, the pure love that you put into building this extraordinary archive. The Congressman reminds us how important it is, and today we finally have a place where we know that all the archives are well tended for, and they'll really be available to the community. So it is with great joy that I present to Nelita, and I'm gonna do this, I need to do this here, okay? This Lifetime Achievement Award, which is about your vision for making the library and archives even more accessible to the public. The Congressman was talking about taking tax dollars, and I was going to say your idea of having more exhibits here and this idea of an oral history is something that's a big passion of mine. So if you help us find the funding, we will produce that exhibit for you. But in that line, I'd like to say there's been once that I can remember where I was happy to hear about a hiring freeze, and that was the hiring freeze in the New York Public Libraries when Nelita went to get a job. Originally, 31 years before she wound up at Centro, so she couldn't find a job there. Wandered into this upstart idea of a central archive, and the rest is history, and what history it is. This is your evening, this is your archive, and this is the love that we show you because we're very, very grateful. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, President Rob. Thank you, Edwin and the Centro and all of you, and all of those wonderful people who are here from all over New Jersey and all parts of New York celebrating tonight. I'm happy to accept the award on behalf of all of those whose efforts over the years have made this library and archives the uniquely valuable resource it is today, particularly the staff of the library and the archives, and most importantly, the donors of papers and records who had the faith and the vision to entrust their treasures to this institution. I feel fortunate to have had the wonderful opportunity to direct this work. I'm not sure who came up with the idea of a Lifetime Achievement Award. I feel like I have one foot in the grave. But it is a fact that about half my life, some 30-odd years, were dedicated to overseeing the growth and development of the library and archives. And it was a fascinating journey, which many others shared. I was fresh out of library school in 1975 when the 2-year-old Centro hired me as a full-time librarian. I retired in 2007. People often ask me, do I miss working? The answer is no. But there are things that I do miss. Mostly, I miss the awe of young Puerto Rican students at finding so many things relating to themselves in a space dedicated to their own history and culture. The joy of someone who found the only existing photo of a beloved relative in a collection. The thrill of discovery, so often expressed by researchers, and working with donors and record creators as they struggled to let go of precious possessions in order to make them available to others, understanding that they were helping to fill in gaps in their community's history, providing building blocks toward expanding knowledge for generations by allowing their stories to be told. The products of historians, diverse scholars, filmmakers, writers, and others give testimony to the value of these sources. It has been deeply satisfying to be a part of this and to help make it possible. As cliched as this sounds, for me it was a labor of love. I fell in love with extraordinary people like Jesus Colón and Don Justo Martí, with Evelina Lopez Antonetti, for whom the library is actually named, and with all those migrant workers, some of whose ID pictures grace the walls of this lobby today. I remember holding Don Justo's documentary photographs and thinking this could have been my family and our living room in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I found myself in the photos and the letters and discovered a community I knew little about despite being one of its members. I felt privileged to hold these treasures in my hand and beyond that, to do something to ensure that others in the present and the future would have that privilege as well. It was like discovering buried treasure, and we were responsible for bringing it to light. I believe that this award recognizes that work and honors these treasures, which make up a large part of the legacy of Puerto Ricans in New York and elsewhere. What is here and has been accomplished is priceless and needs to be preserved and respected because of its uniqueness and historical significance. There is still a lot more to do to deepen this history. I hope the necessary resources will be available to continue to recover this often hidden history, to keep the archives flourishing, and give it the priority and the visibility it so richly deserves. It is appropriate that the opening exhibit is focused on labor and that the artists have dug deep into the extraordinary collections in the archives to create their own pieces. The exhibit, simply titled Labor, is a wonderful illustration of how archives are fundamental to the understanding of individual and community history. Through their creative use of materials, the artists have made visible the enduring capacity and the power contained in the holdings of the archives of the Puerto Rican diaspora. They have made creative use of photographs, documents, and other artifacts contained in the collections to shed new light on the contributions of Puerto Ricans to the infrastructure and the culture of the city and the nation. And they have found a way of sharing their inspiration with the public. An archive becomes meaningless if it is not accessible and made visible, especially to those whose history it documents. This history belongs to all of us, but it is the work of archivists and librarians to gather, preserve, and make accessible the records of our history and culture, to make the invisible visible, to make them available to all. I am proud of all the labor that went into building this repository and honor all the workers who participated in its creation and development. I believe that the Puerto Rican community will continue to thrive as long as its history is made manifest. We must continue to struggle to keep these historical archives available and not hidden from view. It is essential that it continue to be recognized as a living project unfolding through time, making an impact into the future, so long as people seek to interpret and to understand their own history and culture. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here.
I would like to introduce the Library and Archives, the Director of the Library and the Archives, Alberto Hernandez Benucci.
Thank you. Good evening. Buenas noches. Just want to say a few words. So first of all, I would like to take a minute of silence for one of our greatest writers, Piri Thomas, that passed away a few days ago. once I started reading about Puerto Rican diaspora, he was one of the ones that really impacted me personally. And he just passed away the 17th. To continue our program, I would like just to say a few words about what you're looking at as a result of the resources and the wealth of information contained in the Centro Library and Archives. This is part of the promotion, sharing the information, telling the stories of our communities. This is an artistic form of taking the resources and converting them into art. We also have other programs. We have an art mural program with artist Maria Dominguez in the school next door. They came to the exhibition. They were very impacted by what they saw, and now they're trying to do a mock-up mural for the school. And we have already one of the walls in the playground for that for next year. Another program we have is the traveling exhibition, which we're trying to share the exhibits that we have at Centro with other people outside the New York City area and into other states. For this coming month, we're celebrating Puerto Rican Heritage Month, and there's a lot of partners that we have established with Comité Noviembre Borimix, Museo del Barrio, and we have a whole slew of programs with that. I don't really want to say anything because look at these people here. We have Arcadio, we have Martorell, we have... So I just want to let them continue with the show. Susana.
And speaking about the show is called Labor. And frankly, there was a moment beyond which I knew we had a dynamite show. Why? Because we put together 5 amazing artists and the Centro Archives about the migration. And when you get 5 talented, intelligent artists together with some astonishing proof of their roots and their history, you know something good is going to happen. So that's what happened. I want to say some quick thank yous. First to President Raab, who from the first second backed this exhibition very strongly. From El Centro, the reason for this show, we really honor our work, curatorial and artistic, honors the Centro and its archives. Thank you to Edwin Melendez, to Mayra Torres, to Alberto Hernandez for their great leadership. And to archivist Pedro Juan Hernandez, where are you, Pedro Juan? Who over the period of 6 months, he worked very gently and carefully, as only he can, with them. There's a couple of... Oh, there you are. There's a couple of important young people that I would like to thank, without which they were my right hands, my 2 right hands. Lucina Warner from the President's Office and Alex Nunez, who I know is here. And they were really fabulous. I want to tell you that art does not go on the walls all by itself. So I want to thank very much the art handlers who put the works on the walls. And if you think it is easy to make a cross out of 8 works of art with wires, it's not. So it took an immense amount of skill and love. So I thank Jennifer Grimser, Nathan Gruposo, and Dave Manilow. I don't think they're here. While I'm at it, I will thank John Bentham, the photographer, who really took some beautiful photographs. And now, Dennis Rivera is not only a great Puerto Rican leader, he's also a man of his word. He looked at Antonio and at me and he said, I will raise the money so that you can do this show the way you want to do it. And he did. So thank you, Dennis. Without you, we would not have. I hope he hasn't gone home. We had the great honor in this working in this exhibition, in the catalog in particular. And the catalogs are for sale in the gallery on the table. We had the great honor of having two of the greatest scholars working with us and backing us up. One of them is cultural historian Juan Flores, and you will find an essay by him in the catalog. And the other is the great Professor Arcadio Diaz-Quiñones, from whom you will hear in a little moment. My great partner in this wonderful labor of love was Antonio Martorell, who is the co-curator. And then, in order of appearance, Miguel Luciano, Juan Sanchez, Melissa Calderón, and Nitza Tufiño. I wish I could tell you the months and months of love and labor that they went through to produce this show. So thank you. I will leave you in the hands of Antonio.
Gracias, Susana. Buenas noches. Let's see what time it is. Well, the post office is closed out there, but in here it hasn't opened yet. So you have to wait for the special delivery. It will come later on in the evening. But Susana is very modest, and I'm going to reveal her true value here, because she began in this work as curatorial advisor. Advisor my eye. She became really the curator-in-chief due to many factors, amongst them that I shuttle back and forth between the island and New York. I'm not always here. I'm not always there either. I don't know where I am most of the time. And she took on that difficulty plus many others and solved everything. She did such a great job that we all the artists and this co-curator is very, very grateful to her. Thank you, Susana. And now it's my pleasure to present a dear friend of many, 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 many years, so many that I want to tell. And he says that, you know, he's modest also. He says, well, just present me as Professor Emeritus of Princeton University. That hardly sums up his real value. That's taken him very, very short. I mean, but Arcadio, and I can vouch for this for a lifetime of friendship, has taken on the great chore of seeking knowledge, of finding out truth that one of them erases the other and builds upon it. And also, and mainly, focusing on words, on the written word. And you know, the written word is very elusive factor. It is dressed in color, forms, sounds, perfumes, and it's very hard to follow because it's ambiguous. No matter how sharp you want to be of the knowledge, it evades you. And he is a reader, a voracious reader. Once I dare ask Arcadio, really, I mean, how can you read over? How many hours a day do you read? And he and he told me, oh, maybe 6 hours a day. And I said, you're lying. I bet you read at least 10. But it's not so much the time he spends reading, it's the time he spends thinking, finding out what the word means, and also translating that knowledge, transformed into what he says of what he reads, passing it on, because he is a professor, not just emeritus professor of the University of Princeton. He's professor always. Actually, among friends, we call him el profesor. When I call at his home, I say to Alma, his dear wife and my good friend also, I say, Alma, ponme al profesor ahí. So, without more Now I present you El Profesor.
This exhibit struck me from the very first day that I saw it, and from talking with Antonio and Susana on the plans, and now having read the artists themselves and looking at what they have done, that it has a lot to do with something that I value and which I think I associate with Centro, which is, of course, memory, memoria. Not just history, not just historia, but memory and collective memory, which is so important as the history written by scholars, sometimes even more important. So if I had to sort of say it very concisely, I would say that this exhibit is, of course, about labor, trabajo, but it goes far beyond that. It has turned into an exhibit about who we are, why we are here, and where are we going. I think it's a very powerful exhibit, small but very powerful, and it raises those questions, as all artists, real artists, do. That is, we create and recreate ourselves continually by our relationship with the past. And Susana says that very beautifully in her piece here. She talks about an exhibit about resistance, remembrance, and she says very simply, but not so simple, artists lead the way. And I think that has been the case very often. We know that with writers and artists, very often leads the way. And Martorell, in his own brief statement, beautiful statement too, says it very beautifully also. Art, unlike life, never stops. Let's think about that. Art, unlike life, never stops. And it's very revealing because here we have artists working with documents, but turning documents into art. So the lines are very blurred. And that's, I think, the beauty of the exhibit. The lines between what a document is and what art is are very blurred. And that's due to the creativity of the artists and of the writers. The blurred lines in the objects as well as in the photographs between document and art. Juan Flores begins his very impressive piece here by quoting one of the poets that we all know that has really been so important, decisive, I would say, for our collective memory. And that poet you will, of course, identify immediately because I will read also the first lines. They worked, they were always on time, they were never late. And Pietri, which I like about him too, the honesty of an artist, also registered something very important that he found unbearable himself. But he has the honesty to include that right away in the poem. They never spoke back when they were insulted. And it's very provocative because he's talking about people he loves and he loved and we all love. But sometimes art and writers allow us to say something that we feel we should say out loud. And this is a moment talking about archives and coming back to El Barrio, where we should be free to say what we think. Just like Pedro Pietri, one of the most important Puerto Rican writers, wrote, they never spoke back when they were insulted. Maybe he's exaggerating a bit. Maybe it was not never, but very often we know that it happened. And he had the honesty to talk about that in his poem as well. And this is precisely what makes his poetry so powerful. That the book contains, like the art that we see here, a profound, unsentimental sadness. Sometimes a sense of long-standing grief, but also about the hope for the future. And that's, I think, extremely important. There is something that one of the artists says that I want to quote right away in his piece, and I will get to that in a little while. But I will say, I will quote the line from, and it's Miguel Luciano. And Miguel Luciano, with his bicycle and Felicita, no, that wonderful pieces, he says something that struck me reading the catalog. My work engages playful and painful exchanges between Puerto Rico and the United States. I won't read more, but just to incite you to read the entire piece, while also looking at the piece right here. Playful and painful. And I think there's a lot in this catalog and in the exhibit that has to do with pain and also playfulness, which is part of what artists do and writers do. I would say a mix of melancholy and playfulness. In Antonio Martorell, very clearly, in Luciano, but I think in Melissa too, where there's a mixture of sadness and also playfulness, which is probably a good definition of life. The exhibit and the catalog, therefore, I think deals with the social and artistic shape of labor and with the collective memory in the Puerto Rican diaspora. I think it's a real jewel. I think it's a brief catalog that I think we should all read very carefully, because it is brief and right to the point, very well thought, very well conceived, just like the exhibit. And there's a treasure here. To what extent, I think they're asking the artist, does the archive itself and art have the capacity to transform our understanding of the past and to define the meaning? What does it mean to belong to a community? What does it really mean? How do graphic arts, photography, film documentaries, and a whole range of new technologies so clear in the work, let's say, of Juan Sanchez, shape our view of the history of Puerto Ricans? Different genres, poetry, photography, postal stamps in Antonio Martorell, documentary film, and Mexican art, in the case of Nitza Tufino, have been important spaces of reflection on the place of Puerto Rican labor and culture, as well as a way of keeping their memory alive. When the dead, I would add, cannot speak for themselves, Nitza Tufino, Martorell, Juan Sanchez, Melissa Calderón, and Miguel Luciano have given them a new voice and a face very often, and have constantly, throughout the exhibit and in the catalog, reaffirmed the importance of carving out a place for all of them in the national imaginary. I'm looking forward with all of you to make this a great place, and as Nelida Perez said today too, the visibility. The visibility is crucial for an archive, and visibility is what Jose Luis Gonzalez had in mind when he moved his characters to the rooftop, to be very visible up there, celebrating the fact that we had become people again. Gracias.
This is an incredibly emotional moment. And the reference to the tar beach that we see in these wonderful prints, one thing that we also have built on the rooftop of so many tenement buildings are the havens for our pigeons, and how all these wonderful birds became part of not only our culture but our consciousness that's also floating in the air, in addition to being so well grounded. And the fact that El Centro is here, there's a lot of pigeons that we have to catch, teach, have them come here, make the most of what we have to offer, come back, spread the word, more pigeons to come, and so on and so forth. The faces that you see on these walls are faces of people that you may not know, but there are some that you should know, like Antonia Pantoja, among others. And the fact that we spend so much time going through the archives and still learn and come to realize how much we don't know is what makes the archive an infinity of information. Anyway, I had the privilege to pull out a lot of images from the archive, and what you see on the wall is part of the exhibition as well as the video. But I thought that perhaps if these images became part of the library, that would be just a way of opening up the floodgates for more artists to come, create work. I'm hoping that this exhibition is the first of a continuous flow of exhibition, at least once a year or once every 2 years, and that the work that comes out of the exhibition in some moments become part of El Centro's archive collection. So we haven't had time to frame them. They will be framed as you see here, but this is a set of these images. There's also the image inside of Pedro Aviso Campos, and there's also the Puerto Rican shield, because we have transcended centuries of oppression and we have moved forward. So we're super people, we're super Ricans. So those two images is also part of this collection, and I would like to hand it over to our senior archivist, Pedro Juan Hernandez, for the collection. We need to spread the word. We need to pray for this place. This place has to grow. It's obvious that we have already outgrown the new space that we have. So we have to pray that that space will continue to push its way, bogart its way into larger spaces in this building. And I know that that's what's going to happen. Anyway, thank you.
I think we're not beginning a collection, we're continuing it. And it will grow and grow as we Puerto Ricans grow everywhere. We're not easy to get rid of. They've tried, but they can't. Thank you so much for your assistance. And do we have something else in the program coming now, Edwin?
Yes. There is food in that room, and we need to party a little bit now. So, good night, buenas noches, vamos a continuar la fiesta.
And also, now, post office opens as of now.
Okay.